Hello YouTubers, I've got to do it this way because since I have less than 1K subscribers, I'm going to have to record it and then post it, which is annoying. So yeah, that's why I won't get distracted. I just want to show you something before we continue the book. Young Karen! Okay, back to the book. Yeah, present Kieran, young Kieran, is doing breakfast. Okay. It's wonderful to see so many beautiful ladies here tonight, he purred in his Italian accent. Fabio looked even more shiny in real life. His hair was slicked back, his teeth were dazzling white, and his outfit was tight as cling film. Now, are we all ready to rumba? The crowd all cheered, yes. Fabio can't hear you, I says. Are you ready to rumba? Yes, they all screamed again, a little louder than before. Ben was listening nervously backstage. He heard one woman's voice screech, I love you, Fabio. It sounded suspiciously like his mum. Ben looked around the dressing room. It might as well have been a convention of the most annoying children in the world. They looked so unbearably precocious, adored in these ridiculous garnished lycra outfits, smeared in fake tan, and with pearly white teeth so bright they could be seen from outer space. Ben looked anxiously at his watch, knowing he was going to be terribly late to meet his granny. He waited and waited as the over-made-up, quick-stepped, jived, waltzed, Viennese waltzed, tangoed, foxtrotted, and cha-cha-cha'd. Finally, Ben's turn came. He stood in the wings as Fabio announced to him. Now it's time for a local boy who is going to delight us all tonight with a solo dance piece. Please welcome Ben. Fabio glided off the stage as Ben plodded on, his lycra love bomb outfit riding uncomfortably up his bottom. Ben stood alone in the middle of the dance floor. A spotlight shone on him. The music started up. He was praying for some sort of escape from this. He could be happy with anything at all, including a fire alarm, an earthquake, World War III, another ice age, a deadly swarm of killer bees, a meteor from outer space hitting the Earth and spinning off its axis, a tidal wave, Fabio Fellini being attacked by hundreds of flesh-eating zombies, a hurricane or tornado. Ben didn't really know the difference, but either would do. Ben being adopted by aliens and not returning to the Earth for 1,000 years. Dinosaurs returned to the Earth through some kind of time-space portal and smashing through the roof, devouring everyone in sight. A volcano erupting through annoyingly there didn't seem to be any volcanoes nearby. An attack of giant slugs. Even an attack of medium-sized slugs would do. Ben wasn't fussy. Any of the above would have sufficed. The music played for a while, and Ben realized he hadn't moved his body yet. He looked over at his parents, who beamed with pride, seeing their only child enter stage at last. He looked to the wings, where the ever-smiling Fabio was giving him an encouraging grin. Please make the ground open up now. It didn't. There was no choice but to do something, anything. Ben started moving his legs, then his arms, then his head. None of these parts of his body moved in time or sequence, and for the next 5 minutes he threw his body around the dance floor in a style that can only be called unforgettable. As much as you might want to forget it, you can't. Ben tried a jump at the end, just as the music stopped, and he fell to the floor with a thud.
Here you go, story reader.
There's silence. Deafening silence. Then Ben could hear the sound of one pair of hands clapping. He looked up. It was his mum. Then another pair of hands joined in. It was his dad. What was that? You want
I'm having the rest of the
pasta?
filled up pasta bolognese.
Mhm.
It's nice.
Mm.
But I added. I changed a little bit of the ingredients.
What?
I put cheese strings and a little bit of more tomato ketchup.
Okay.
It's actually quite nice. Good combo. Shame you don't like cheese strings. Okay, back to the story.
For a few seconds, he thought it might be one of those moments you see in a film when the underdog triumphs against all the odds, that soon everyone in the hall would be on their feet, cheering and applauding this local boy who had at last made his loved ones proud and at the same time reinvented dancing forever. The end. Well, no, that's not what happened. After a few moments, his parents felt embarrassed to be the only people applauding and stopped. Family returned to the stage. Well, that was, for the first time, the Italian heartthrob seemed lost for words. Judges, can we have your score, said Ben, please? Zero, said the first. Zero. Only one more judge to go. Could Ben make it 4 zeros? But the final judge must have felt sorry for the sweaty little boy in front of her, who had shamed his family for generations with his epic displays of talentlessness. She shuffled her scoring paddles under the desk. 1, she announced. There were loud boos and jeers from the audience.
Yeah. I want your chocolate toast.
I am sorry. I mean 0. She said, holding up her original choice of paddle.
Hey, don't need to be that begging.
Slightly disappointing scores from the judges there, said Fabio, still trying hard not to smile. But young Ben is on all is not lost. As the only boy who entered the silver male category tonight, you are therefore the winner.
Yes, ma'am.
May I present you with this solid plastic statuette?
Beggy monster.
Fabio picked up a cheap-looking trophy of a dancing boy and presented it to Ben. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, a round of applause for Ben. There was silence again. Even Mum and Dad didn't dare to clap. Then boos started. And then cheers. And catcalls. Shouts of, shame on you, no, and fix.
That's why I heard you're like a dishwasher.
Mm-hmm.
Good? No. Pardon me.
Right. Bless you. Fabio's perfect smile began to crack. He leaned down to Ben and whispered in his ear, "You better get out of here before you get lynched." At that exact moment, a tap shoe was thrown from the back of the audience. It flew at speed through the air. It was probably aimed at Ben, but instead, it hit Fabio right between the eyes, and he fell to the ground unconscious. Time to make my excuses and leave, thought Ben. Picture, picture, picture.
Yeah, there's not usually any pictures in books like that.
Actually, I did start showing the pictures, but then it took up too much time yesterday, so I stopped showing them. But there are pictures I missed out.
Ah.
22. Lycra lynch mob. An angry mob of ballroom dancing enthusiasts chased the little brown car down the street. Looking out the back window, Ben thought this would perhaps be the only time in history a lynch mob was dressed entirely in lycra. Dad put his foot down on the accelerator. Vroom! And they turned a corner and lost them. "Thank goodness I was there to give Fabio the kiss of life," said Mum from the front seat. "He was just unconscious. He hadn't stopped breathing, Mum," said Ben from the back.
Pardon me.
"You can't be too careful," said Mum, reapplying her lipstick. Most of it was now smeared over Fabio's face and neck. "Your performance was, in a word, dreadful and embarrassing," announced Dad. "That's 2 words," corrected Ben with a chuckle. 3 if you count the "and." "Don't get funny with me, young lad," snapped Dad. "There is no laughing matter. I was ashamed of you. Ashamed." "Yes, ashamed," grumbled Mum in agreement. Ben felt like he could give anything to disappear. He would give all of his past and all of his future just so he didn't have to be sitting in the backseat of his Mum and Dad's car right now. "I'm sorry, Mum," said Ben. "I want to make you proud. I really do." It was true, making his parents ashamed. Well, that was the absolute last thing he wanted. However stupid he thought they were sometimes. "Well, you have a funny way of showing it," said Mum. "I just don't like dancing, that's all." "That's not the point. Your mother spent hours making your costume," said Dad. "It's strange how parents always refer to each other as mother and or father rather than Mum and Dad when you are in trouble. You made no effort up there on the stage whatsoever," Dad continued. "I don't think you even rehearsed once. Not once. Me and your mother might work night and day to give you the opportunities we never had, and this is how you treat us." "With contempt," said Mum. "Contempt," echoed Dad. A single tear ran down Ben's cheek. He caught it with his tongue. It tasted better. The 3 sat in silence as the car rumbled home. No words were spoken as they got out of the car and went into the house. As soon as Dad opened the front door, Ben bounded up to his room and slammed the door. He sat on his bed, still in his love bomb outfit. Ben had never felt more alone. He was hours late to meet Granny. Not only had he let her down, his Mum and Dad, he had let down the only person he had grown to love more than anyone, his Granny. They were never going to steal the crown jewels now. Just at that moment, there was a quiet tap on his window. It was Granny. Dressed in her scuba diving gear, the old lady had climbed a ladder to reach her grandson's bedroom window. "Let me in," she mouthed theatrically. Ben couldn't help but smile. He opened the window and hauled the old lady inside. like a fisherman might haul a practically big fish to his boat. You are very late, astonished Granny as Ben helped her over to the bed. I know, I'm sorry, said Ben. She said 7 o'clock. It's 10:30. The sleeping tonic I gave the girls at the tower will be wearing off soon. I'm really sorry. It's a long story, said Ben. Granny sat on Ben's bed and looked him up and down. And why are you dressed like a demented Valentine's card? She demanded. As I said, it's a long story. It was a bit rich for Granny to criticise what he had on, considering she was dressed in a wetsuit and scuba diving mask, but there wasn't time to get into that now. Quick, boy, put on this wetsuit and follow me down the ladder. I'll start with the mobility scooter. Are you really going to steal the crown jewels, Granny? Well, we are going to have to go. Well, we're going to have a go, said the old lady with a smile. 23, caught by the fuzz. They whirled through the town, Granny driving, Ben clinging on behind her, both in wetsuits and diving masks, with Granny's handbag wrapped in miles of cling film sitting in the basket at the front. Granny spotted Raj closing up his newsagent's shop. Hello, Raj. Dear, don't forget to save me some mummy mints for Monday, she shouted. Raj looked at the two of them, open-mouthed in shock. I don't know what's got into him. He's normally so chatty. It was a long way to London, especially on a motorised scooter with a top speed of 3 miles per hour with 2 passengers. While a Ben noticed the roads getting wider and wider, 2 lanes then 3 lanes. Bums, we're on the motorway, shouted Ben from the back as 10-ton lorries whooshed past, nearly wrenching the scooter off the road with the force of the split stream. Babes.
Oh yeah.
Is it them?
Hooch is barking at invisible people again.
You know, you really shouldn't swear, young man, said Granny. Now I'm going to step on it, so hold on tight. A moment later, a particularly big petrol tanker thudded by, inches from their heads, beeping its horn. Big hairy bum, said Granny. Granny, said Ben, shocked. Whoops, that one just slipped out, said Granny. Grown-ups never lead by example. I'm sorry, Granny, but I am not sure this thing is built for a motorway, said Ben. Just then, an even bigger lorry busted past. Ben could feel the wheels of the scooter lift off the road for a second, as the slipstream dragged it in the lorry's wake. I'll take the next exit, said Granny, but before she could, flashing blue lights behind to spin behind them. Oh no, it's a fuzz. Let's see if I can outrun them. She slammed her foot on the accelerator, and the scooter leapt from 3 miles per hour to 3.5 miles per hour. The police car drove alongside them, and the officer inside gestured angrily for them to pull over. Gunny, you better pull over, said Ben. We're done for. Let me handle this, my boy. Gunny stuck the mobility scooter on the hard shoulder as the police car parked in front of them, blocking any chance of escape. It was a big car and drove the scooter, like a very tall person dwarfs. Well, a dwarf. Is this your vehicle, madam? Said the police officer. He was fat and had a small moustache, which made his fat face look even fatter. He also had a smug expression on his face that suggested telling people off was his favourite thing to do in the world. Or maybe second favourite, after donuts. His name tag said that he was called PC Fudge. Is there a problem, officer? Said Granny, innocently, her diving mask a little steamed up from all the excitement. Yes, there is a problem. The use of the motorised mobility scooters on motorways is strictly prohibited, said the police officer in a patronising tone. Other modes of transport not permitted on the motorway are a skateboard, a canoe, roller skates, a donkey, a shopping trolley, a unicycle, a sledge, a rickshaw, a camel, a magic carpet, or a comedy ostrich. Well, thank you so much for pointing that out, officer. We'll remember for next time. Now, if you excuse me, we are running a little late. Goodbye, said Granny cheerily as she restored to the mobility scooter. Have you been drinking, madame? I had some cabbage soup before I came out. Alcohol, I mean, he laughed. He sighed. I had a brandy liquor chocolate on Tuesday night. Does that count? Ben couldn't help but chuckle. PC Fudge's eyes narrowed. Then would you care to explain to me why you are dressed in scuba diving gear with your handbag wrapped in cling film? This was going to take some explaining. Because, Granny was stumbling over her words. They were done for. Because we are going from the Cling Film Appreciation Society, said Ben with authority. I've never heard of that, said PC Fudge dismissively. We are very new, said Ben. Just 2 members so far, added Granny, continuing the lie. And we like to keep the society low-key, so we have our meetings underwater, hence the wetsuits. The policeman looked utterly baffled. Granny didn't stop talking, apparently in the hope that she might baffle him further. Oh. Now, if you'll excuse us, we are in the rather a hurry. We have to get to London for an important meeting with the Bubble Wrap Appreciation Society. You're thinking of merging the 2 organisations. PC Fudge was all but lost for words. How many members have they got? Just 1, said Granny. But if we join forces, we could save money on tea bags and photocopying and paper clips and the like. Goodbye. Granny put a foot down on the accelerator and the ability scooter lurched off. Stop right there, said PC Fudge, holding his podgy hand out straight in front of him. Ben froze in terror. He wasn't even 12 yet, and he was going to spend the rest of his life in jail. PC Fudge leaned over and put his face next to Granny's. I'll give you a lift. You can move, you know. 24, Dark Waters. Just here, please, said Granny, directing from the backseat of the police car, just opposite the tower. Thank you so much. PC Fudge strained as he unloaded the scooter out of his boot. Well, next time, please remember that mobility scooters are meant only for pavements, not main roads, and certainly not motorways. Yes, officer, replied Granny with a smile. Well, good luck to you, too, with the whole Cling Film Bubble Wrap Alliance thing. And with that, PC Fudge sped off into the night, leaving Granny and Ben gazing at the magnificent 1,000-year-old Tower of London on the opposite bank of the river. It was particularly spectacular at night, its 4 doomed towers lit up, its reflection shimmering on the cool, dark River Thames below. The tower was once a prison with illustrations list of former inmates, including the future Queen Elizabeth I, the adventurer Sir Walter Raleigh, the terrorist Guy Fawkes, and senior Nazi Waldorf Heinz, Jedward. I lied about the last one, but I would like to see Jedward locked up forever in the Tower of London for crimes against music. Now, though, the tower is a museum and home to the priceless crown jewels, housed in their own special building, Jewel House. The unlikely pair of gangsters stood at the riverbank. Are you ready? Asked Granny, her mask completely steamed up from sitting in the back of her police car for over an hour. Yes, said Ben, trembling with excitement. I'm ready. Granny reached out to hold Ben's hand, and then she counted. 3, 2, 1, and on 1 they leapt into the dark waters below. The water was freezing cold, even with the wetsuits on, and for a few moments all Ben could see was black. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. When the heads bubbled out of the water, Ben took the snorkel out of his mouth for a moment. Are you okay, Granny? I have never felt more alive. They duggy paddled across the river. Ben had never been a great swimmer and lagged behind a little. Secretly, he wished he had bought his armbands or at least a lilo. A huge party cruiser with music blaring and young people shouting chugged down the river. Granny had swum ahead, and Ben had lost sight of her. Oh no! Had she been crushed by the cruiser? His granny in a watery grave at the bottom of the Thames. Oh, so soft. Come on, slow coach. Oh, so soft. Shouted Granny as the putty boat passed and they caught sight of each other again. Hooch, don't even think about it. Ben sighed with relief and continued doggy paddling across the deep, dark, dirty water. According to the diagram in Plumbing Weekly, the sewage pipe was situated just to the left of Traitor's Gate. This was an entrance to the tower only accessible from the river, where many prisoners would be taken to be locked up for the rest of their lives or beheaded. Nowadays, Traitor's Gate has been bricked up, so the pipe was only way into the tower from the river. Then, with a rush of relief, Ben found the pipe. It was partly submerged under the water. It was dark and eerie, and he could hear the echoes of lapping waves river beating inside it. Suddenly, Ben began to have second thoughts about the whole adventure. As much as he liked plumbing, he didn't want to leave to crawl up an ancient sewage pipe. Come on, Ben, said Granny, as she bobbed up and down in the water. We haven't come this far to give up now. Well, thought Ben, if a little old lady can do it, then I certainly can. Ben took a deep breath and propelled himself into the pipe. Granny followed close behind. It was blacker than black in there, and after he travelled a few meters, he could feel something crawling across his head. He heard an eek, eek noise and could sense something scratching on his scalp. He felt like claws. He touched something big and furry. Then he realised the awful truth. It was a rat. A giant rat was clinging to the top of his head. Ah! Screamed Ben. 25. Hunted by ghosts. The sound of Ben's scream echoed through the length of the pipe. He whacked the rat off his head and it landed on top of Granny, who was crawling up the pipe just behind him. Poor little rat, he said. She said, sorry. Be gentle with it, dear. But he was here first. Now, come on. We have to hurry. The sleeping tonic chocolate cake I gave the girls will be wearing off very soon. The pair crawled further up the pipe. It was wet and slippery and it smelled awful. Unfortunately for Ben and Granny, it turns out that ancient poo just still pong. After a while, Ben could see a shaft of grey and all the black. It was the end of the tunnel. At last. He hauled himself out of the ancient stone privy and then reached down the pipe to help his Granny clamber out. They were covered from head to toe in disgusting, stinky black slime. Standing inside the cold, dark toilet, Ben spied a glassless window in the wall. They clambered through this and landed on the cold, wet grass of the tower's courtyard below. For a few moments they lay there, gazing up at the moon and the stars. Ben reached out and held Granny's hand. She squeezed it tight. This is amazing, said Ben. Come on, dear, she whispered. We've barely started yet. Ben stood up and helped Granny to her feet. The old lady immediately started unwrapping the cling film that she had waterproofed her handbag with. This took several minutes. I think I may have overdone the cling films. Still, better safe than sorry. Eventually, a mile-long roll of cling film was off, and Granny took out a map Ben had cut off out of a book in the school library, so the two unlikely thieves could locate Jewel House. It was eerie being inside the Tower of London courtyard at night. The tower is said to be haunted by the ghosts of people who died there. Over the years, several guards have run away in terror, claiming that at the end of the night they had seen the ghosts of various historical figures who had died there. Now, though, there was something even stranger roaming the courtyard. Granny in a wetsuit. This way, hissed Granny, and Ben followed her down a walled passage. Ben's heart was beating so fast he thought he was going to explode. After a few minutes, they were standing outside Jewel House, overlooking Tower Green, and the moment to those who were beheaded or hanged there. Ben wondered if he and Granny would be executed if they were caught stealing the crown jewels, and a shiver ran down his spine. Two beefeaters were lying on the courtyard, snoring loudly. That reminds me of Kieran and Hooch. The
Oi.
The intimate black and red uniforms embossed with ER were becoming
Ever need a red?
soiled on the wet ground. Granny's herbal sleeping tonic and the chocolate cake had worked, but for how long? As she turned past them, Granny let out a familiar quacking sound from her bum. One of the guards' nose crinkled at the smell. Ben held his breath, not just because of the smell, but because he was afraid. Was Granny's bottom burping going to wake the guard up and ruin everything? An eternal moment passed. Then the guard opened one eye. Oh no. Granny pushed Ben back and raised her handbag, as if to clobber the beefeater with it. This is it, thought Ben. We'll be hanged. But then the guard closed his eye again and continued snoring. A bit like me. Granny, please try to control your bottom, hissed Ben. I didn't do a thing, said Granny innocently. It must have been you. They tiptoed to the huge steel door at the front of Jewel House. Right, I just needed Dad's power gel, said Granny, reaching inside her handbag. With a juddering will, she started drilling through the series of locks on the door. One by one, the metal logs crumbled to the ground. All of a sudden, the guard snored extremely loudly. Ben froze and Granny nearly dropped the power drill, but the guard slept on, and after a few nerve-wracking minutes, the door was finally unlocked. Granny looked exhausted.
Everyone wants to join this.
Sweat was dripping down her forehead. She sat down on a low wall for a moment, and then pulled out a thermos flask.
What you doing for? Thank you.
Cabbage soup, she offered. No thank you, Granny, replied Ben. He shifted uneasily. We better get going before the guards wake up. Rush, rush, rush. That's all you kids do these days. Patience is a virtue. She poured the last of her cabbage soup down her throat and rose to her feet. Delicious. Right, let's do this, she said. The huge steel door creaked as it opened, and Ben and Granny entered Jewel House. Out of the dark came a flurry of black feathers, hitting Ben and Granny in the face. Ben was so startled he screamed again. Shh, said Granny. What are they? Said Ben, as he saw the winged creatures disappear off into the black sky. Bats. No, dear, ravens. There are dozens of them here. Ravens have lived at the tower for hundreds of years. This place is spooky, said Ben, his stomach knotted in fear. Especially at night, agreed Granny. Now stay close to me, boy, because it's about to get a whole lot spookier. 26. Figure in the dark. A long winding corridor stretched out ahead of them was where tourists from around the world queued for hours to see the crown jewels. The old lady and her grandson tiptoed their way silently along it, dripping smelly, icy water from the Thames in their wake. Finally, they turned a corner to the main room, where all the jewels were kept. Like the sun bursting through the clouds on a grey day, the jewels illuminated Ben and Granny's faces. The pair of thieves stopped in awe. Their mouths fell open as they looked at the treasures laid out before them. They were more magnificent than anyone could imagine. It truly was the most superb collection of precious objects in the world. Dear reader, not only were they beautiful and priceless, they symbolized hundreds of years of history. They were a number of royal crowns. Sir Edward's crown, with which the new king or queen is crowned by the Archbishop of Canterbury during the coronation ceremony, is made of gold and decorated with sapphires and topazes, proper bling. The imperial state crown, in which was set an incredible 3,000 gems, including the second star of Africa, the second largest stone cut from the largest diamond ever found. No, I don't know where the first star is. The breathtaking imperial crown of India, set with around 6,000 diamonds
Yeah.
and magnificent rubies and emeralds. Unfortunately, not my size. The 12th century gold anointing spoon, used to anoint the king or queen with holy oil, not to be used for eating Cocoa Pops. Not forgetting the apula, a gold flask.
Chocolate.
Oh, in the form of an eagle, which contains that holy oil, like a really posh, famous flask. And finally, the famous orb and scepters. That's a lot of gear. If the crown jewels were featured in the August catalogue, they probably look like this.
I know.
You're just attacking Kieran.
For no particular reason.
He looks like he was well. Look, you know, look at his arms are.
Exactly. He's like me. Bigger, bigger. Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Granny took out the rolled up supermarket carrier bag she kept in her handbag, ready to put the crown jewels in. Right, we just need to break through this glass, she whispered. Ben looked at her with disbelief. I'm not sure we're going to get all these jewels in there. Well, sorry, dear, she whispered back. You have to pay 5 pence for plastic bags at the shops these days. So we only bought the one. The glass was inches thick, bulletproof. Ben had smuggled a few compound chemicals out of his science class and combined them to go kaboom! It set alight. They stuck the chemicals to the glass with some blue tack. Then Granny attached one end of the wall of the ball of pink wool to the blue tack. One wool would be the perfect fuse. Then she produced some matches. They just needed to make sure they were far enough away from the explosion, otherwise they might be blown up too. Right, Ben, whispered Granny. Let's get as far away from the glass as we can. The pair returned around a wall, unraveling the wool as they went. Are you sucking my arm? Oh, his thumb. Okay. The pair okay. Do you want to light the fuse? Said Granny. Ben nodded. He really wanted to, but his hands were trembling so much with excitement he didn't know if he could. Ben opened the matchbox. There were only 2 matches inside. He went to strike the first, but his hands were shaking so much that it broke in two when he did. Oh dear, whispered Granny. Have another go. Ben picked up the second match. He tried... Bless you. He tried to strike it, but nothing happened. Some river water must have leaked out of the sleeve on his wetsuit. Now both the match and the matchbox were soaking wet. No, cried Ben in desperation. Mum and Dad were right. I am useless. I can't even light a match. Granny put her arms around her grandson. As they cuddled, her wetsuit squeaked a little. Don't talk like that, Ben. You are an amazing young man. You really are. Since we have been spending so much time together, I am 100 times happier than I could ever say. Really, said Ben? Really, replied Granny. And you are so very clever. You planned this whole extraordinary heist yourself, and you're only 11 years old. I'm nearly 12, said Ben. Granny chuckled. But you get my point, dear. How many other children your age could plan something as daring as this? But we aren't going to steal the crown jewels now.
My eye.
I don't feel the same thing. So it's all been a massive waste of time. It's not over yet, said Granny, as she pulled...
Anything else you want to like, as in the no-no area?
I'd rather like that. Okay.
Abio.
Oh no, Sonny! rude. I'll continue reading. It's not over yet, said Granny, as she pulled out a tin of cabbage soup from a handbag. We can always try some good old-fashioned brute force. Granny handed the tin to her grandson. Ben took it with a smile, and then walked over to the cabinet. Here you go, said Ben, as he swung back the tin to strike the glass. Please don't, said a voice from the shadows. Ben and Granny froze in terror. Was it a ghost? Who's there? Ben called out. The figure stepped into the light. It was the Queen. 27. An audience with the Queen. What on earth are you doing here? Asked Ben. What on earth are you doing here, Your Majesty? I like to come here when I can't sleep, replied the Queen. She spoke in that instantly familiar posh voice of hers. Ben and Granny were surprised to see she was wearing a nightgown and little furry corgi slippers. She was also wearing the coronation crown on her head. It was the most magnificent of all the crown jewels. The Archbishop of Canterbury placed it on her head when she was crowned Queen in 1953. The crown, which dates back to 1661, is made of gold, encrusted with diamonds, rubies and pearls, emeralds and sapphires. It was impressive. My hair. Okay, it's an impressive look, even for the Queen. I come here to think, the Queen went on. I got my chauffeur to bring me over from the Buckingham Palace in the Bentley. I have my Christmas address to the nation in a few weeks, and I need to think carefully about what to say. I want to say, one always finds it easier to think with one's crown on. The question is, what on earth are you two doing here? Not that picture, this one, the Queen. Look at the Queen. But Ben and Granny looked at each other, ashamed. Being told off was bad enough at the best of times, but being told off by the Queen was on a whole other level of being told offness. To this simple graph demonstrates a parent, a teacher, a head teacher, an air hostess, a librarian, a postman, a scoutmaster, traffic warden, park keeper, vicar, policeman, a judge. Then the Queen is huge. And why do the pair of you who smell like poo-poo? Well, pushed Her Majesty, I am waiting. I am certainly to blame, Your Majesty, said Granny, blowing her head. No, she's not, said Ben. It was me who said we should steal the crown jewels. I talked her into it. That's true, said Granny, but it's not what I mean. I started this whole thing when I pretended to be an international jewel thief. What? Explained Ben. Pardon, said the Queen. One is terribly confused. My grandson hated staying with me on Friday night, said Granny. I heard him one night calling his parents and complaining about how boring I was. But Granny, I don't think that anymore, protested Ben. It's all right, Ben. I know things have changed since then. And in truth, I was boring. I just like to eat cabbage and play Scrabble. And I knew deep down that you hated those things. So I made up stories from the books I read to entertain you. I told you I was an infamous jewel thief called the cat. But that.
No.
But what about those diamonds you showed me? Said Ben, feeling shocked and angry that he'd been deceived. All worthless, dear, replied Granny. Made of glass. I found them in an old ice cream tub at the local charity shop. Ben stared at her. He couldn't believe her. Couldn't believe it. The whole thing, the whole incredible story was made up. I can't believe you lied to me, he said. I mean, said Granny flatteringly. Ben turned to glare at her. You're not my gangster Granny at all, he said. Then there was a deafening silence in the jewel house, followed by a rather loud and rather posh cough. Ahem, said an imperious voice. 28. Horn drawn and quartered.
Hey, stop it.
I'm terribly sorry to interrupt, said the Queen in her clipped tones, but might we get back to the important matter at hand? I still don't understand why the two of you are here in the Tower of London in the middle of the night smelling a poo-poo and attempting to steal my jewels. Well, once I started... Help him out, Sooty. Well, once I started, the line grew and grew. Your Majesty, continued Granny, avoiding Ben's eyes. I don't mean for it to happen. I just carried away, I suppose. It was so nice to spend that extra time with my grandson, to have fun with him. It reminded me of when I used to read him bedtime stories. That was in the days when he didn't find me boring. Ben fidgeted. He was starting to feel guilty, too. Granny had lied to him, but that was horrible. But she'd only done it because she was upset that he thought she was dull. I had fun too, he whispered. Granny smiled at him. Smile, sorry. I'm glad, little Benny. I'm so sorry. I really... Ahem, interrupted the Queen. Oh, yes, said Granny. Well, before I knew it, things had snowballed, and we were planning to take on the most daring robbery of all time. We climbed up the sewage pipe, by the way. We didn't usually smell like this, Your Majesty.
Stop it.
I should hope not. Pooh! Ben was feeling really guilty now. Careful, my hand. Even if Granny had never been an international jewel thief, she certainly wasn't boring. She had helped plan this robbery with him, and now here they were in the Tower of London at midnight talking to the Queen. I have to do something to help her, Ben realised. The robbery was my idea, Your Majesty, he said. I'm so sorry. Please let my grandson go, interjected Granny. I don't want his young life ruined. Please, I beg you. We were going to return the crown jewels tomorrow night, I promise. I likely so, remembered the Queen. It's true, explained Ben. Please do what you want with me, Your Majesty, continued Granny. Have me locked up here in the tower forever, if you like, but I beg you, let the boy go. The Queen looked lost in thought. I really don't know what to do, said the Queen eventually. I am touched by your story, as you know, but I am a grandmother, and my grandchildren find me dull sometimes. Really? Asked Ben. But you are the Queen. I know, the Queen chuckled. Ben stunned. He had never seen the Queen laugh before. She was usually so serious, and never cracked a smile when giving her speech on TV at Christmas, opening Parliament, or even watching comedians at the Royal Variety Show. But to them, I'm just their boring old granny, she continued. They forget that I was young once, and that they too will be old one day, added Granny, with a meaningful look to Ben. Exactly, my dear, agreed the Queen. I think the younger generation need to have a bit more time for the elderly. I'm sorry, Majesty, said Ben. If I hadn't been so selfish and moaned about old people being boring, none of this would have happened. There was an uncomfortable silence. Granny rummaged in a handbag and offered the Queen a bag of sweets. Merriment, Your Majesty? Yes, please, said the Queen. She unwrapped it and popped it into her mouth. Gosh, I haven't had one of these for years. They're my favourite, said Granny.
Oh.
And they last so long, added the Queen, as she sucked it, before composing herself again. Do you know what happened to the last man who attempted to steal the crown jewels? Inquired the Queen. He was hung, drawn, and quartered, asked Ben excitedly. Believe it or not, he was pardoned, said the Queen, with a weary smile. Pardon, Your Majesty? Said Granny. In 1671, an Irishman by the name of Connell Blood tried to steal them, but he was caught by guards as he tried to escape. He hid this very crown I am wearing now under his cloak and dropped it on the ground just outside. King Charles II was so amused by Connell Blood's daring attempt that he set him free. I must Google him, said Ben. I don't know what Googling is, said Granny. No, me, chuckled the Queen. So, in royal tradition, that's what I'm going to do, pardon you both. Oh, thank you, Your Majesty, said Granny, kissing her hand. Ben fell to his knees. Thank you so much, Your Majesty. Yes, don't grovel, said the Queen, haughtily. I can't abide grovelling. I have met far too many grovellers during my reign. I am so sorry, Majesty, my dear Royal Majesty, said Granny. That's exactly what I mean. You're grovelling now, replied the Queen. Ben and Granny looked at each other in fear. It was hard not to speak to Her Majesty without grovelling at least a little bit. Now, jolly along quickly, please, said the Queen, before this whole place is overrun with guards. And don't forget to watch me on the telly on Christmas Day. 29. Armed police. It was dawn by the time they trottled back into the grey close. This time there was no police car to give them a lift. It was a very long way home from London on a middle scooter. Over the speed bumps they went, bump, 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 and whirled into Granny's drive. What a nice sight, Ben. My word, yes. Good golly, I do feel rather stiff from sitting on that thing for so long, said Granny, as she eased her old and tired body off the scooter. I'm so sorry, you know, Ben, she said after a pause. I really didn't mean to hurt you. It was just so nice spending time with you. I didn't want it to stop. Ben smiled. It's okay, he said. I understand why you did it. Don't worry. You're still my gangster, Granny. Thank you, said Granny softly. Anyway, I think that's quite enough excitement to last a lifetime. I want you to go home, be a good boy, and concentrate on your plumbing. I will, I promise. No more heists for me, chuckled Ben. Suddenly, Granny froze. She looked up. Ben could hear a helicopter whirling overhead. Granny? Shh! Granny adjusted her hearing aid and listened intently. That's more than one helicopter. It sounds like a fleet. Woo, 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 woo.
Woo, 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 woo.
Yeah, that. The sound of police car sirens screeched from all around. Within moments, heavily armed police surrounded them from every angle. Granny and Ben couldn't see any of the bungalows in the house anymore because they were trapped behind a wall of policemen in bulletproof vests. The whirl of police helicopters overhead was so deafening that Granny had to turn her hearing aid down. A voice came over a megaphone from one of the helicopters. You are surrounded. Put down your weapons. I repeat, put down your weapons or we will shoot. We haven't got any weapons, shouted Ben. His voice hadn't broken yet, and it came out a little girly. Don't argue with them, Ben. Just put your hands in the air, shouted Granny over the noise. The gangster pair put their hands up. A number of especially brave policemen surged forward, pointing their guns right at Ben and Granny. They pushed them over and pinned them to the ground. Don't move. Come, came the voice from the helicopter. Ben thought, how could I move with a great big policeman kneeling on my back? That's what they're going about. A flurry of leather-gloved hands made their way up and down their bodies and fumbled through Granny's handbag.
Up and down, up and down.
Careful, my hair. Presumably searching for guns. If they had been searching for used tissues, they'd be in luck. But they didn't find any weapons. This who's really... Oh, there he is. Ben and Granny were then handcuffed and brought to their feet. Out from behind the wall of policemen stepped an old man with a very big nose, wearing a pork pie hat. It was Mr. Parker, Granny's nosy neighbour.
Nosy.
Yes. 30, a packet of sugar. But cute, though. Thought you would get away with stealing the crown jewels, did you? Went Mr. Parker. I know all about your wicked plan. Well, it's over. Officers, take them away and lock them up and throw away the key. The policeman pulled the captors in the direction of two whirling police cars. Hang on a sec, shouted Ben. If you stole the crown jewels, where are they? Yes, of course. The evidence. We all need to put you two gangsters behind bars forever. Search the basket of the scooter at once, said Mr. Parker. One of the policemen went through the basket. He found a large package wrapped in sucky cling film. Ah, yes, that must be the jewels, said Mr. Parker confidently. Give it here. Mr. Parker shot Granny and Ben a smug look, and he started unwrapping the package. Bless you. Quite a few minutes passed until the big package was a little package. Finally, Mr. Parker reached the end of the cling film. Ah, yes, here we are, he announced, as a tin of cabbage soup fell to the ground. Can I have that, please, Mr. Parker? Said Granny. It's my lunch. Search her bungalow, barked Mr. Parker. A few policemen started to bash open the front door by charging at it with their shoulders. Granny looked on, amused, before venturing. I've got the key right here, or you'd rather use that. One of the policemen approached her and rather sheepishly took the key. Thank you, madame, he said politely. Granny and Ben shared a smile. He then opened the door, and what seemed like hundreds of policemen charged inside. They frantically searched the bungalow, but after a short while, they re-emerged empty-handed. There's no crown jewels in here. Why are you looking at me?
So he was miming you.
Why are you miming me? Why? Stop. There's no crown jewels in here, I'm afraid, sir, said one of the policemen. Just a Scrabble set and quite few more tins of cabbage soup. Mr. Parker's face went red and furry. He had called out half the police officers in the country, all for nothing. Now, Mr. Parker, said one of the policemen to him, you are very lucky we aren't arresting you for wasting police time. Wait, said Mr. Parker, just because the jewels aren't on them or in the house doesn't mean they don't have them. I know what I heard. Search the garden, yes, dig it up. The policeman put up a clammy hand. Mr. Parker, we can't just. Suddenly, a light of triumph lit up in Mr. Parker's eyes. Hang on, you haven't asked them where they were this evening. I know they went to steal the crown jewels, and I bet they don't have an alibi for tonight. The policeman turned to Ben and Granny, frowning. Actually, that's not a bad point, he said. Would you mind telling me where you were tonight? Mr. Parker was positively beaming now. Just then, another policeman wandered over to them. There was something familiar about him, and when Ben saw his mustache, he knew why. Boss, we just had a call for you on. PC Fudge began, holding up a walkie-talkie. He stopped suddenly, staring at Ben and Granny. Well, he says, if it isn't the cling film people. PC Pear, said Ben. Fudge, corrected Fudge. Sorry, yes, Fudge. Nice to see you again. The superior officer looked confused. Sorry? The lad and his granny. They're the Cling Films Appreciation Society. They went to the annual meeting in London tonight. I dropped them off, in fact. So they weren't stealing the crown jewels, asked his boss. No, laughed PC Fudge. They were merging with the Bubble Wrap Society, stealing the crown jewels indeed. He smiled at Ben and Granny. What an idea. Mr. Parker had gone red in the face. But, they did it. The villains, I'm telling you. While he was spluttering, the superior officer took the walkie-talkie from PC Fudge. Yep, right, thank you, he says. He turned to Ben and Granny. That was Special Branch. I asked them to check if the crown jewels were still there. Turns out they are. I'm sorry, madam and boy. We have those handcuffs off you in a jiffy.
Yay!
Picture. Mr. Parker slumped, looking utterly dejected. No, it can't be. If I hear one more peep out of you, Mr. Parker, said the policeman, I will throw you in the cells for the night. He turned smartly on his heel and walked over to one of the patrol cars, followed by PC Fudge, who waved at Ben and Granny as he left. Ben and Granny approached Mr. Parker. The hands were still cuffed together. What you heard were just stories, said Ben. Just my granny telling me stories, Mr. Parker. I think you may have let your imagination run away with you. But, blustered Mr. Parker. Me? A national jewel thief? Granny chuckled. The policemen all started chuckling too. You'll have to be a bit daft to believe a thing like that, she says. Sorry, Ben, she whispered to her grandson. That's okay, Ben whispered back. The policeman unlocked the handcuffs and hastily retreated to the cars and vans and sped off out of great close. Sorry to disturb you, madame, said one of the departing officers. Have a good day. The helicopters disappeared up into the dawn sky. What are you doing? What are you two doing?
Okay.
Okay. As the blades got faster, Mr. Parker's precious pork pie hat flew off his head and into a puddle. Granny approached Miss Parker, who was standing hatlessly in her drive. If ever you need to borrow a packet of sugar, she said kindly. Yes, said Mr. Parker. Don't knock on my door. I will shove that bag of sugar up your backside, said Granny with a sweet smile. 31. Golden light. The sun had risen, and grey clothes was bathed in golden light. There was dew in the ground, and an unearthly mist made the new row of bungalows look somehow magical. Ah, well, said Granny with a sigh. You better run home now, young Ben, before your parents wake up. They don't care about me, said Ben. Oh, yes, they do, said Granny tentatively, putting her arm around her grandson. They just don't know how to show it. Maybe. Ben yawned, the biggest yawn he had ever yawned in his life. Gosh, I'm so tired. Tonight was amazing. It was the most thrilling night of my life, Ben. I wouldn't have missed it for the world, said Granny with a twinkling smile. She took a deep breath. Oh, the joys of being alive. Then her eyes filled with tears. Are you all right, Granny? Said Ben softly. Granny hid her face from her grandson. I'm fine, child, I really am. Her voice wavered with emotion as she spoke. Suddenly, Ben knew something was very wrong. Granny, please, you can tell me. He held her hand in his. Her skin was soft but worn, fragile. Well, said Granny hesitantly, there was one thing I lied to you about, dear. Ben had a sinking feeling. What's that? He asked, and he squeezed her hand reassuringly. Well, the doctor gave me my test results last week, and I told you I was fine. If that was a lie. I'm not fine. Granny paused for a moment. The truth is, I have cancer. Oh no, said Ben, with tears in his eyes. He had heard about cancer, enough to know it could be deadly serious. Just before you ran into him at the hospital, the doctor told me the cancer, well, it's very advanced. How long have you got left? Spluttered Ben. Did you say? He says I wouldn't make Christmas. Ben hugged his granny as tight as he could, willing his body to share his life force with hers. Tears were running down his cheeks. It was unfair. He'd only really got to know Granny in the last few weeks, and now he was going to lose her. I don't want you to die. Granny looked at Ben for a moment. None of us are going to live forever, my boy, but I hope you never forget me. You're boring old Granny. You're not boring at all. You're a proper gangster. We nearly stole the crown jewels, remember? Granny chuckled. Yes, but not a word of that to anyone else. You could still get in a whole heap of trouble. It will have to remain our little secret. And the Queen, said Ben. Oh, yes, what a nice old dear she was. I will never forget you, Granny, said Ben. You will forever be in my heart. That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me, said the old lady. I love you so much, Granny. I love you too, Ben, but you better be running along now. I don't want to leave you. That's very sweet of you, dear, but if your mum
Get off!
and Daddy wake up and find you gone, they are going to be extremely worried about you. They won't. Oh, yes, they will. Now, Ben, please be a good boy. Ben reluctantly rose to his feet. He helped his granny up off the step. Then he held her close and kissed her on the cheek. He didn't mind her heavy chin. In fact, he loved it. He loved the whistle of her hearing aid. He loved that she smelled of cabbage. And most of all, he loved that she blew off without even knowing it. He loved everything about her. Goodbye, he said softly. Goodbye, Ben. "32. A family sandwich. When he finally arrived home, Ben noticed the little brown car was missing from the drive. It was still very early in the morning. Where could his parents have gone at this hour? Nevertheless, he climbed up the drain pipe, through the window, and back into his bedroom. All the clambering was hard work. He was tired after staying up all night, and the wetsuit made him heavier than usual. Ben moved his plumbing weeklies aside so he could hide the wetsuit under his bed. Then, as quietly as he could, he put on his pajamas and climbed into bed. Just as he was about to shut his eyes, he heard the car sped up the drive and the front door open, and then the sound of his mum and dad sobbing uncontrollably. "We've looked everywhere for him," said Dad, sniffing. "I don't know what to do." "It's my own stupid fault," added Mum through her tears. "We should never have entered him for that dance competition. He must have run away from home." "I'll call the police." Yes, we must. We should have done that hours ago. We have to get the whole country out looking for him." Hello, I need the police, please. It's my son. I can't find my son." Ben felt so wretchedly guilty. His parents did care about him, after all, masterfully. He leapt out of bed, burst open his bedroom door, ran down the stairs into their arms. Dad dropped the telephone. "Oh, my boy," said Dad. He hugged Ben tighter than he'd ever hugged him before. Mum put her arms around her son too, until they were one big family sandwich, with Ben as his villain. "Oh, Ben, thank goodness you came back," wailed Mum. "Where have you been?" "With Granny," replied Ben, not quite telling the whole truth. She's very ill," he said, sadly, but he could see from his parents' faces that it wasn't a surprise to them. "Yes," said his dad, uncontrollably, "and I'm afraid she's..." "I know," said Ben. "I just can't believe you didn't tell me. She's my granny." "I know," said Dad, "and she's my mum too. I'm sorry I didn't tell you, son. I didn't want to upset you." Suddenly, Ben could see the pain in his dad's eyes. "That's okay, Dad," he said. "Me and your mum have been up all night looking everywhere for you," added Dad, as he squeezed his son ever tighter. "He never would have thought to look for you at your granny's. He always said she was boring." Another picture. "Well, she's not. She's the best granny in the world." Dad smiled. "That's sweet, son. But you should still have told us where you were." "I'm sorry. After I let you down so badly at the dancing competition, I didn't think you cared about me." "Care about you?" said Dad, a shocked expression on his face. We love you so much, Ben," added Mum. "You must never think differently. Who cares about a silly dance competition hosted by TV's Fabula Fellini? I'm so proud of you, whatever you do." "We both are," said Dad. They were all crying and smiling now, and it was hard to know if the tears were happy or sad ones. It didn't really matter. They were probably a mixture of both. "Shall we go to Granny's for a cup of tea?" said Mum. "Yes," said Ben. "That'll be nice." "And me and your dad have been talking," said Mum, taking her son's hand in hers. "I found the plumbing magazines." "But," said Ben. "It's all right," continued Mum. "You don't have to be embarrassed. If that's your dream, you go for it." "Really," said Ben. "Yes," chimed in Dad. We just want you to be happy." "Only," continued Mum, "me and your dad think if the plumbing doesn't work out as a career, it's very important that you have something to fall back on." "What is it?" "Fall back on?" asked Ben. He really didn't understand his parents at their best at times, let alone now. "Yes," said Dad. "We all know ballroom dancing isn't your thing." "No," agreed Ben, relieved. "So how do you feel about ice skating?" asked Mum. Ben stared at her. For a long moment, Mum just looked straight at him. Then finally her face cracked. "Oh, for God's sake!" For a long moment, Mum just looked straight back at him. Then finally...
Now stay.
I'm gonna get this paragraph out. For long... Ow, my shoulder. Okay. For a long moment, Mum just looked straight back at him. Then finally her face cracked, and she burst out laughing. And then Dad was laughing too, and even though they were in tears still in his face, Ben couldn't help joining in. 33. Silence. After that, things were much better between Ben and his parents. His dad even went to the hardware shop with him and bought him some plumbing tools, and they spent an extremely enjoyable afternoon together taking apart a U-bend. Then, a week before Christmas, the three of them received a large night phone call. A couple of hours later, Ben, Mum and Dad were gathered around Granny's bed. She was in a hospice, which is where people go when the hospital can't treat them anymore. She didn't have long to live. Hours maybe. The nurses said she could go any time. Ben was sitting anxiously by Granny's bed. Even though she had her eyes closed and didn't seem able to speak, sitting in that room with her was an incredibly intense experience. Dad paced up and down at the front of the bed, unsure of what to do or say. Mum sat looking on, feeling helpless. Ben simply held Granny's hand. He didn't want her to slip away into the darkness alone. They listened to her raspy breathing. It was a horrible sound, but there was only one sound that was worse. Silence. That would mean she was gone. Then, to everyone's surprise, Granny blinked and opened her eyes. She smiled when she saw the three of them. "I'm famished," she said in a weak voice. She reached under her sheets and took out something wrapped in cling film, which she started peeling. "What's that?" asked Ben. "It's just a slice of cabbage cake," wheezed Granny. "Honestly, the food in here is ghastly." A little later, Mum and Dad went out to get a coffee from the vending machine. Ben didn't want to leave Granny's side for 1 second. He reached out and took her hand. It was dry and light. Slowly, Granny turned to look at him. She was running out of time. Ben could see that. She winked. "You'll always be my little Benny," she whispered. Ben thought how he used to hate that name. Now he loved it. "I know," he said with a smile. "And you'll always be my gangster Granny." Later, after Granny had finally gone, Ben sat quietly at the back seat of his mum and dad's car as they drove home from the hospice. They were all tired from crying. Meanwhile, loads of people were out Christmas shopping. The roads were full of cars, and there was a long queue outside the cinema. Ben couldn't believe life was going on as normal when something so momentous had just happened. The car turned a corner and approached the little parade of shops. "Can I pop into the newsagent, please?" said Ben. "I won't be long." Dad parked the car, and as a light snow was falling, Ben made his way alone into Raj's shop. "Ding!" went the bell as the door opened. "Ah, young Ben," explained Raj. The newsagent seemed to notice the sad look on Ben's face. "Is something the matter?" "Yes, Raj," sputtered Ben. "My granny just died." Somehow saying that made him start crying again. Raj rushed out from behind the counter and gave Ben a hug. "Oh, Ben, I'm so sorry. I hadn't seen her for a while, and I guess she wasn't well." "No, and I just wanted to say, Raj," said Ben between sniffs. "Thank you so much for telling me off that time. You were right. She wasn't boring at all. She was amazing. I wasn't trying to tell you off, young man. I just thought you had probably never taken the time to get to know your granny." "You were right. There was so much more to her than I imagined." Ben wiped the tear away from his sleeve. Raj began searching his shop. "Now, I have a packet of tissues somewhere. Where are they?" "Oh, yes, just underneath the football stickers. Here you go." The newsagent opened the packet and passed them to Ben. The boy rubbed his eyes. "Thank you, Raj. Is it 10 packets of tissues for the price of 9? He says with a smile. No, chuckled Raj. 15 packs for the price of 14. Raj put a hand on Ben's shoulder. "You don't understand," he says. "They're on the house." Ben stared. In all the history of the world, Raj had never been known to give anything away for free. It was unheard of. It was madness. It was going to make Ben cry if he wasn't careful. "Thank you so much, Raj," he said, quickly choking up a little. "I better get back to my parents. They are waiting outside." Yes, but just one moment," said Raj. "I have Christmas presents somewhere here for you, Ben," he said, rummaging around his cluttered little shop again. "Now, where is it?" Ben's eyes lit up. He loved presents. Yes, it's right here behind the Easter eggs. Found it," explained Raj as he produced a bag of merry mints. "Are you okay there, Sooty? Sooty? What's wrong with Sooty?"
Oh, he's really upset, I think.
Oh, because the Nana died. Ben was a tiny bit disappointed, but he did his best to hide it. Oh my. Wow, thank you, Raj, said Ben, doing his best school play acting. A whole packet of moments. Not just one mint, said Raj, opening the bag and taking a single moment out before handing it to Ben. They were your granny's absolute favourite. I know, said Ben, with a smile. 34, Zimmer frame. The funeral was on Christmas Eve. Ben had never been to a funeral before. He thought it was bizarre. As the coffin lay at the front of the church, the mourners mumbled their way through unfamiliar hymns, and a vicar who had never met Granny made a tender speech about her. It wasn't the vicar's fault, but he couldn't have been waffling on about any old lady who had just died. He went on to a dreary monotone about how she liked visiting old churches and was always kind to animals. Ben wanted to shout out. He wanted to tell everyone, his mum and dad, his uncles and aunts, everyone there, about what an incredible granny she was, how she told the most amazing stories, and most of all, he wanted to tell them about the marvellous adventure he had shared with her, how they all had nearly stolen the crown jewels and met the Queen. But no one would have believed him. He was only 11. They would assume he had made the whole thing up. When they arrived home, most of the people who were at the church descended on the house. They drank cup after cup of tea and ate plate after plate of sandwiches and sausage rolls. It seemed weird having the Christmas decorations up at such a sad time. At first, people chatted about Granny, but soon they were gossiping about other things. Ben sat alone on the sofa, listened to the adults talking. Granny had left him all her books, and they were now cluttering up his bedroom in great piles. He was tempted to hide away in his room with them. After a while, a kind-looking old lady moved slowly across the room with her Zimmer frame and eased herself down next to him on the sofa. You must be Ben. You don't remember me, do you? Said the old lady. Ben looked at her for a moment. She was right. Last time I saw you was your first birthday, she said. No, no wonder I don't remember, thought Ben. I am Granny's cousin Edna, she said. Me and Granny used to play together as girls. When we were just about your age, I had a fall a few years ago and I couldn't cope with my own, so I was put into an old folks' home. Your Granny was the only person who would come and visit. Really? She didn't think she ever went out, said Ben. Well, she came to see me once a month. It wasn't easy for her. She had to get 4 different buses. I was extremely grateful. She was a very special lady. She was indeed incredibly kind and thoughtful. I don't have any children or grandchildren of my own, you see, so me and your granny would sit in the lounge for the old folks' home and play Scrabble for hours together. Scrabble, said Ben. Yes, she told me how much she liked playing too, said Na. Ben couldn't help but smile. Yes, I loved it, said Ben. And to his surprise, he realized he wasn't lying. Looking back, he had loved it. Now his granny was gone. Every moment he had spent with her seemed precious, more precious even than the crown jewels. She never stopped talking about you, said Edna. Your dear old granny said you were the light of her life. She said she would really look forward to you coming to stay on a Friday. It was the best part of her week. It was the best part of my week too, said Ben. Well, if you like Scrabble, you must pop over to the old folks' home one day for a game, said Na. I need a partner now your granny's gone. That'll be great, said Ben. Later that evening, as his parents watched the Strictly Stars Dancing Christmas special, Ben climbed out of his bedroom window and slid down the drain pipe. Without making a sound, he took his bike out of the garage and cycled to Granny's house one last time. Snow was falling. It crunched under the wheels of his bike.
All around you. Children playing. Having fun.
No, shush. Ben watched it come down, landing softly on the ground, barely paying attention to his route. He knew the journey off by heart now. He had cycled to the old lady's so many times over the last few months, he knew every bump and crack in the road. He stopped his bike outside Granny's little bungalow. There was a scattering of snow on the roof. Bless you. Post was piled up outside. The lights were all off and there was a for sale sign with icicles hanging off it, sitting outside. Even so, Ben was half expecting to see Granny at the window, looking at him with that hopeful little smile of hers. But of course, she wasn't there. She was gone forever. But she wasn't gone for his heart. Ben wiped away a tear, took a deep breath, and cycled off home. He sure had an amazing story to tell his grandchild one day. Postscript. Christmas is a special time of year, said the Queen. She was her usual serious self, seated majestically on a unique antique chair in Bungalow Palace, once again delivering her annual message to the nation. Mum, Dad, and Ben had just finished their Christmas lunch and were slumped together on the sofa with mugs of tea watching the Queen on TV, as they did every year. A time for families to get together and celebrate Her Majesty went on. However, let's not forget the elderly. A few weeks ago, I met a lady around my age and her grandson at the Tower of London. Ben squirmed uncontrollably in his seat. He glanced at his parents, but they were watching the TV, oblivious. It made me think how the young need to show a little more kindness to the elderly. If you're a young person watching this, perhaps give up your seat for an elderly person on the bus, or help them carry their shopping. Share a game of Scrabble with us. Why not bring us a nice bag of merriment once in a while? And most of all, young people of this country, I want you to remember this. We old people are certainly not boring. You never know, one day we might even shock you. Then, and with a mysterious grin, the Queen lifted up her skirt and a tight country and flushed her Union Jack knickers. Mum and Dad spat out her tea all over the carpet in astonishment, but Ben just smiled. The Queen's a proper gangster, he thought, just like my granny. Picture. Another picture. Another picture. I think that's it, actually. Yeah, that's it. What?
So you said, sorry I got emotional.
It's fine, Sooty. Alright? It's fine, you know. Let me ask you two these. Was Hoot distracting you?
Yes.
Is he relaxing now?
Yes.
That's annoying because I'm finished the book. Isn't it?
Hoot, you son of a bitch.
Okay. My knees need to. Okay. So, that was Gangster Granny. So, for me, Sooty, Hooch, and Kieran, and Tiggs, that's bye-bye.